A woman in an expensive business suit collapsed to her knees in the gleaming lobby of her own corporate headquarters the instant the elevator doors opened on the 22nd floor. Hundreds of employees stood frozen in disbelief as their fearless CEO wrapped both arms around a quiet, weathered man carrying nothing more than a faded canvas bag. Tears streamed down her face while she whispered words no one expected to hear from the most powerful executive in the building. She admitted that everything she had become had been built upon a secret she had hidden for nearly 20 years, and the man everyone believed was merely an anonymous guest had just walked back into her life carrying the truth she could no longer bury. Before we discover why that unexpected reunion shattered the image of an untouchable leader, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing stories that remind us how one compassionate choice can change a lifetime. Meredith Callaway had built one of the country's fastest-growing medical technology companies through relentless discipline, impossible standards, and a reputation for never allowing emotions to interfere with business. Her employees admired her brilliance but feared her silence more than raised voices. Investors trusted every decision she made because she rarely made mistakes. Newspapers described her as a self-made success whose intelligence alone had carried her from poverty to unimaginable wealth. She accepted every award with grace, smiled for every photograph, and carefully avoided speaking about her childhood. Whenever interviewers asked about her early years, she redirected the conversation toward innovation, teamwork, or the future. The public believed she simply valued privacy. No one realized that every unanswered question protected a promise she had made long ago. Her office occupied the entire 22nd floor of the headquarters overlooking a bright city skyline filled with sparkling glass buildings and busy streets alive with the movement of people chasing ordinary dreams. Sunlight poured through enormous windows, illuminating polished wooden floors and walls decorated with awards recognizing leadership and humanitarian work. Visitors admired the elegant simplicity of the office, yet one corner remained strangely empty except for a small wooden chair that looked decades older than everything surrounding it. Every cleaner had been instructed never to move that chair. No employee understood why. On a warm spring morning, Meredith's assistant informed her that an elderly visitor had arrived without an appointment. Security had almost turned him away, but he quietly insisted that Meredith would recognize something inside his worn canvas bag. Irritated by the interruption, Meredith nearly refused the meeting. Then the assistant placed a tiny carved wooden bird onto her desk. The instant she saw it, the color drained from her face. She stood motionless as memories she had locked away for years crashed through every carefully built wall inside her heart. 20 years earlier, Meredith had not been a CEO. She had been an exhausted teenager carrying every possession she owned inside a backpack after aging out of foster care. Hungry, frightened, and ashamed, she wandered downtown searching for work. Every interview ended with rejection because she had no permanent address, no experience, and no references. She spent afternoons pretending to read books inside the public library simply because it was warm and safe. One afternoon she sat crying alone on a park bench after learning that another job opportunity had disappeared. An older maintenance worker noticed her from across the park. His name was Graham Ellison. His uniform was faded, his boots were worn, and his paycheck barely covered his own expenses, yet kindness seemed to follow him wherever he walked. Without asking uncomfortable questions, Graham simply offered her half of his homemade lunch. Meredith initially refused, embarrassed by her situation. Graham smiled gently and began eating his own sandwich while speaking about ordinary things like birds nesting in nearby trees and children laughing around the fountain. His calm conversation slowly dissolved her fear until she finally accepted the meal. That afternoon became the first of many. Whenever Graham saw Meredith searching for work, he quietly slipped an apple into her backpack or left a wrapped sandwich beside her without drawing attention. He repaired a broken zipper on her jacket, gave her directions to organizations that helped young adults, and encouraged her to keep applying for scholarships despite countless disappointments. When Meredith doubted herself, Graham repeated one sentence that never left her memory. He believed that the world often measured people by what they possessed, but truly remarkable lives were built by what they chose to give away. Months later Meredith earned admission into a university program through determination and financial aid. On the morning she left town, Graham handed her the small carved wooden bird and told her it should remind her that hope could always find its way home. She promised she would return. Life, however, moved faster than promises. University became graduate school. Graduate school became a startup company. Investors arrived. Success multiplied. Responsibility expanded. Meredith intended to visit every year, then every few months, then someday when things slowed down. Eventually she convinced herself Graham was probably doing well and would understand. Years disappeared. Standing inside her office now, Meredith stared at the same carved bird resting in her hand. Her assistant quietly explained that the elderly visitor refused refreshments and simply waited downstairs. Meredith hurried toward the elevator. Employees watched in confusion as their composed CEO almost ran through the lobby. When the doors opened, she saw Graham sitting peacefully beside a large window where sunlight warmed the polished floor. He looked older than she remembered. His shoulders had become thinner. Silver hair replaced the dark curls she once knew. Deep lines surrounded gentle eyes that still carried the same quiet warmth. The moment their eyes met, Meredith forgot every executive title, every billion-dollar contract, and every carefully rehearsed public appearance. She embraced him with overwhelming gratitude and heartbreaking regret. The lobby fell silent. Rumors immediately spread throughout the building. Some assumed Graham was a wealthy investor. Others believed he was a retired founder or hidden board member. Nobody imagined that the man wearing inexpensive clothes had once shared his lunches with the woman now leading the company. Meredith invited Graham upstairs. As they entered the 22nd floor, he noticed the old wooden chair near the window. She admitted she had searched for it years after leaving because it reminded her of the park bench where hope first returned to her life. She eventually found it stored by the city during renovations and quietly purchased it before placing it inside her office. Graham smiled but said nothing. Instead, he handed Meredith a weathered envelope. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings documenting her achievements. Every major milestone had been carefully cut, dated, and preserved. There were magazine covers, scholarship announcements, business articles, charity recognitions, and photographs of Meredith receiving awards. She realized Graham had followed her entire journey from afar. Every success she celebrated alone had actually been celebrated by someone who never stopped believing in her. Overcome with emotion, Meredith asked why he had never contacted her. Graham gently explained that he never wanted gratitude to become an obligation. He had helped because someone once helped him when he desperately needed compassion. Kindness was never meant to create debt. It was meant to create another act of kindness somewhere else. Those words shattered Meredith. For years she believed her charitable foundation honored Graham's influence. She donated millions to educational programs and homelessness initiatives, convinced she had repaid the goodness shown to her. Yet she suddenly understood that she had never given Graham the one gift he truly deserved. Her presence. During lunch Meredith learned another painful truth. Graham had recently received a serious medical diagnosis. Treatment was possible, but expensive travel and specialized care had exhausted nearly all his savings. He had not come seeking financial help. In fact, he initially refused to mention his health at all. He had only wanted to deliver the carved bird after realizing he might not have many opportunities left. Meredith felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. The man who once shared food despite having almost nothing had quietly faced illness without asking anyone for help. That afternoon Meredith canceled every executive meeting. For the first time since founding the company, she invited every employee into the auditorium. Standing before hundreds of workers, investors, journalists, and board members attending a scheduled corporate presentation, Meredith abandoned the polished speech prepared by her communications team. Instead, she told the truth. She confessed that every magazine calling her self-made had overlooked the stranger who first believed in her when believing in herself seemed impossible. She admitted she had allowed ambition to become an excuse for neglecting the person who deserved her gratitude most. Success had given her influence, but it had also distracted her from relationships that mattered beyond achievement. The audience listened in complete silence. Then Meredith introduced Graham. No elaborate biography followed. She simply explained that if one hungry young woman had never received a simple lunch, patient encouragement, and quiet dignity from an ordinary maintenance worker, none of them would be standing inside that successful company today. Many employees wiped away tears. Several executives later admitted they had expected another quarterly business announcement, not a confession that completely transformed how they viewed leadership. In the following weeks, Meredith personally arranged every aspect of Graham's medical care while respecting his independence and dignity. She visited appointments instead of sending assistants. They spent afternoons talking about old memories, laughing over forgotten stories, and watching people cross sunny parks much like the one where their lives first intersected. Those conversations slowly healed wounds neither realized they still carried. Meredith also transformed company culture. Employee volunteer days became paid opportunities rather than optional events. Emergency assistance funds expanded for workers facing hardship. Mentorship programs paired experienced employees with young people aging out of foster care. Instead of celebrating only financial achievements, the company began recognizing everyday acts of compassion performed by ordinary staff members. The greatest surprise arrived months later when employees requested that the conference center be renamed after Graham. He initially protested, insisting he had done nothing extraordinary. Meredith answered with quiet conviction that changing one person's future was never ordinary. On the day the dedication ceremony took place, sunlight streamed through the building's enormous windows exactly as it had during their reunion. Graham stood humbly beside a simple plaque while employees applauded not because he had accumulated wealth or fame, but because he had demonstrated something far rarer. He had noticed someone invisible. He had chosen kindness when no audience was watching. He had invested in a future he would never ask to own. Before the ceremony concluded, Meredith invited everyone to reflect on one question. She asked them to think about the person whose quiet kindness had changed their lives and encouraged everyone watching this story to leave a meaningful comment sharing the lesson or act of compassion that has stayed with them the longest, because someone else may find hope in your experience. Years later, visitors touring the headquarters often asked about the unusual wooden chair displayed near the CEO's office. Employees proudly explained that it remained there to remind everyone that greatness never truly begins in boardrooms, corner offices, or impressive titles. It begins the moment one human being decides another person's pain matters. Meredith no longer feared telling her story. She openly acknowledged that the greatest investment of her life had never appeared on a balance sheet. It had arrived inside a paper lunch bag carried by a maintenance worker who expected nothing in return. Her biggest secret had become her greatest confession, and that confession inspired thousands of others to choose compassion before judgment, generosity before pride, and gratitude before regret. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. May we all remember that the smallest act of kindness offered in someone's hardest season can become the foundation of a future neither of you could ever imagine.